Do you love the Tabernacle Choir? This year, the choir's music is everywhere you are. Listen to your favorite choir songs and music and the spoken word anytime you want on Alexa by simply enabling the skill.
Alexa, play music in the spoken word.
Now playing music in the spoken word.
You can also download the Tabernacle Choir app, subscribe to the choir on YouTube, listen on Spotify, and have access to all their wonderful music. Happy listening.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Not only do these guys give you the best Jazz coverage in the market, they've got you covered with the Mammoth, the Cougars, the Utes, and the Aggies. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, want to remind you to join Scotty G and the coach coming up on Thursday from 10 to 2 at Tim Daly Mazda in Sandy, 10785 South Auto Mall Drive. Go and see those guys. Ben, we talked about the Magic Vegas predicting wizard earlier in the show, setting the Jazz over-under wins line at, what was it, Christian? 35 and a half. And you and I both think, even though we find the line very silly, but if you absolutely have to wager, or if I were to wager, I suppose, then I would absolutely take the over. Mm-hmm. But the counter-argument to that would probably be the center position, no?
Correct. That's a big part of it, and that the rest of the NBA might be trying a little bit more. So are we going to have 5 teams that win in the teens like we have for the last several seasons, or does that number jump up to 24, 25, and all of a sudden, if that's the case, or 28, 29, is it harder to get to 35 than we think? Are we still looking at 35 as easily attainable as it was for the last 5 or 6 seasons under the now previous lottery system? And my answer is, I don't know. I again, as I've said, the closer I get to this, the more I recognize a lot of my preconceived notions. I'm better off if I challenge them and just don't assume that I know, because it doesn't actually help me that much to pretend I know.
Okay, well, what way are you leaning then?
I think the Jazz are going to win more than 35 games.
No. I mean, on a sense that the new tanking rules will, which way? That they will make it more difficult to win 35 games?
I think it's going to make it more difficult to win 35 games.
Okay. Here's my pushback. To your point, I don't know either. But my pushback would be, I bet you no fewer games are actually thrown this year. It's who's throwing the games. So the argument would be there are fewer situations where a team is motivated to lose. Mm-hmm. And I would say I don't think that's true. I actually think the same amount of games will be thrown in the NBA. It's just going to change who throws them. So if you look at last year and look at all the teams that were tanking and count up how many games were intentionally lost, because that's what we're talking about, right?
Right.
I bet you the number will end up being the same. Except for at the end of the year, teams will be scrambling, yes, to be over the 20-win mark or whatever. But teams that are at the 30-win mark or 35-win mark are going to start booting games to not lose their draft pick in a sense. So it's going to be at different times of the season, different teams are going to still be intentionally losing games. It's not just going to be automatically the 3 teams at the bottom.
There will still be teams tanking. Who's tanking is different. I think that's completely fair. And I will tell you, I don't know how that affects a 35-game win projection versus last year. I would have bet my house. I don't gamble on sports, but I would have bet my house the Jazz were going to win more than 18 games. Because it was so hard for them 2 years ago to only win 17 games, and they were naturally going to be better. Even after Walker Kessler got hurt, it was obvious the Jazz were going to win that many games. Neither here nor there. That's not necessarily what I'm kind of curious about with the Jazz conversation right now, which is going on, which is I've got a lot of Jazz fans who listen to the Jazz podcast that I do. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday with Daniel Gafford. And, is he available? Is he not available? Should the Jazz go get it? What question we didn't ask is, do the Jazz have the assets to go get Daniel Gafford? Of course they do.
Yes.
Jazz have 1 million draft picks. They've got young players. If they wanted to go get Daniel Gafford, they would just go get Daniel Gafford, assuming he's actually available. Fine. Then the question is, if he's available and the Jazz don't, why? It's not because they think Jaxson Hayes is a better player or Mo Bamba is a better player. So then I get to my next question. I just kind of continue to pull at the thread, and I do wonder, while I think the Jazz want to make the playoffs this year, and they really have no motivation for not making the playoffs this year because their draft pick goes to the Memphis Grizzlies in the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, how motivated are the Jazz actually going to feel to maximize the win total of this roster using all the assets available to them to get there? And my guess is it's actually not as high as fans would think.
No, because they don't have to do anything.
Because they don't have to do anything.
No.
Exactly right.
They don't even have to make the playoffs
No,
next year.
they don't have to do anything. They truly don't have to do anything.
So,
in fact, the worst case scenario for the Jazz is not as bad as we thought it even could have been 3 months ago, because the NBA determined that even if the Jazz win the lottery and that pick goes to Memphis, it can be no better than the 6th overall pick, because the Jazz are the only team in the NBA who's had a top 5 pick in back-to-back seasons, and now they don't let you have a top 5 pick in back-to-back-to-back seasons, so it automatically falls to 6. So even worst case scenario for the Jazz is the 6th pick going to Memphis in a bad draft. It's probably not that big of a deal. So then, yeah, my question is, how dedicated are the Jazz to improving the center spot? How dedicated are the Jazz to maximizing what this roster is in front of them?
the truth is they are dedicated to it. But that doesn't mean they have to do anything about it right now.
Sure.
But no, not one person in that building, if you went up to them and said, hey, is the Bosnian Beak your answer at center? Not one of them is going to say yes.
Right. Or Jaxson Hayes.
Or any of that. No, they're not.
Yeah.
So, yes, they do need to address the problem, for sure. Do they need to address it right now?
I don't think so.
Absolutely not. No. Why would they?
No, and I wonder if there is a disconnect between Jazz fans and the Jazz themselves, of people not recognizing that patience, which is a hallmark and maybe a double-edged sword of Danny Ainge, and I don't know if it applies to Austin Ainge and Justin Zanuck, who now run the Utah Jazz, with Danny as the CEO, is that patience a positive, a negative, a net zero? I honestly don't know. And I don't know how it's going to affect what they do with this center position, because I thought they were going to re-sign Walker. And I think they thought they were going to re-sign Walker. And then they saw the number and they thought, oh, no, we can be more patient than that. That doesn't bother us that much. So, again, what I had assumed and kind of what I had been told did not end up being true. So the reason I just bring it up is I don't know what direction the Jazz are going to go with the center position. I'm totally with you. The answer's not on the roster today, but I don't know when they decide they have to fix it.
Well, when you feel like you have to fix it right away, that's how the Phoenix Suns end up with the Bosnian Beak in the first place.
Correct.
Which turned out to be a mistake. They had to make 2 trades just to move off him.
Or how the Lakers pay 4 first-round draft picks and $32 million for a non-All-Star center.
If they felt that sense of urgency, Walker would still be on the team. Mm-hmm. Because they would have just matched whatever
Very
the
easily.
Lakers gave them.
Yeah.
They obviously don't feel that urgency because they made the deal that they made.
Yes.
Again, the grand bargain of that Lakers-Jazz deal was who is going into the season without a center. The Lakers didn't think that they could. The Jazz don't feel that same urgency. So the Jazz took 2 first-round picks and 2 swaps from the Lakers because the Lakers were desperate. Mm-hmm. The Jazz obviously are not desperate.
Right.
Or they would have just matched whatever, and Walker Kessler would still be on the team. So I guess what is the discussion? Should they feel desperate? Because I think if you're trying to ask yourself, like, do they feel desperate to do something? The answer to that is obviously no. So that begs the question, are they in the wrong? Should they be more desperate? My answer would be no, because they still are a super young team. And they still have 2 more years with both Jaren and Lowry Mm-hmm. So even if they wanted to keep it together, they shouldn't be in any sort of rush. What's the point?
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
I'm with you. The question is, and the point is, do you need to, quote, maximize every game you have with Lowry and Jaren together? Because there's a real world where once you pay Keontae, which is coming next summer if it doesn't happen this year, and then Ace is quickly on his heels, or Darren is quickly on his heels, assuming they become good players. By the way, they might not. Mm-hmm. At one point, the Jazz were looking at how are we going to be able to pay Dante Exum and Gordon Hayward and Rodney Hood all together. And then Dante and Rodney Hood were not very good, and it wasn't a big deal. And Gordon left on his own, so you didn't have to worry about paying all three of them. In fact, you didn't really get a chance to pay any of them. But you could be looking at that world. How do you afford Jaren and Lowry and Keontae and Ace and all these players who are going to be good? Some of them are going to naturally work themselves out of the system because they're not going to live up to the expectation. But is that where the Jazz, that's the point. Did the Jazz feel some urgency to get a center to maximize the possibilities they have right now while Lowry and Jaren are on the roster? And again, going back to the answer, I don't know if they do. Because if they did, they would give up a first-round draft pick to go get Daniel Gafford.
No.
Or they would have matched Walker Kessler.
Yeah, you know. You don't have to guess.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. If the answer were yes, Walker would be on the team still.
He would be a member of the Utah Jazz.
The answer is no. The question should be, is that a mistake?
Correct.
My answer would be no. Because I think Jaren Jackson and Lowry are fine players, but there's more to the long-term success of the Utah Jazz than just those two guys. And for the reasons that you point out right there. But it's no reason to make the wrong mistake. Getting back to our comparison we made it last week, a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was. If somebody comes up to you and offers to pay you $10,000 for your car right now, but you have to worry about how you're going to get home, you still take the deal.
Right.
And then you figure out how you're going to go home. And what you don't do is buy the next car that you see on the street. No, you
Correct.
make do until you find the right situation for yourself.
But the flip side is, if you're in the middle of the desert and there's one canteen of water left, and the guy next to you says, I'll give you $4 million for that one thing of water, but you have to have the water to survive, you don't sell the water.
Well, that's the point, though. The Jazz aren't in the middle of the desert.
Clearly, they don't feel
No,
that way.
they don't.
But I do wonder if there are Jazz fans who are zoomed out saying, you're in the middle of the desert. We've been watching this team for 4 years wander. You're down to your last canteen. When are you going to start trying to get home? And that's what the Jazz just sold off with Walker. And I wonder if I know there are fans who feel that way.
Well, there won't. I don't think the Jazz are in the desert.
I think that's totally fair. And sometimes I think my job is not to justify what the Jazz are doing or say, good job, Jazz, or bad job, Jazz. I really think my job is to kind of translate why the Jazz make some of the decisions they do. Be the person who says, well, the current league rules or the current league landscape suggests this, and the Jazz did this, and this is how those fit together. Not, oh, the Jazz are dumb, or oh, the Jazz are smart. I don't always think that's my job. I offer opinions, certainly, but I don't think that's always what my job is supposed to be. But so I'm curious of how do you translate what the Jazz just did to fans who are wondering what happened? And I think you're exactly right. I think the way you're explaining it is exactly right. The Jazz don't feel desperate. We're telling you why they don't feel desperate. And also, that doesn't mean I think it's necessarily the right move. It could be the wrong move. I don't know.
To stick with our desert thing, the idea is to have enough water to make it through the desert. You'd never want to be the person who is drinking sand because they're so thirsty that they've gone insane. when the Suns make all their desperate moves a couple of years ago and then convince themselves that Nurk is the savior, they're just drinking sand in the desert.
Yes.
The idea is to have the resources to make it through the desert. You know what so don't put yourself in the position to be desperate. And the Jazz are not in the position to be desperate because, frankly, they didn't have title expectations anyway.
Yeah.
The Suns, again, back to this example, you make a trade for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, and you spend all those resources trading for those players. Well, you got to drink now, dude. You have to drink now. The Jazz are not in that position. They weren't with Walker. So if you can pad your resources and put yourself in a more advantageous position with a short-term setback that may have been inevitable or may have been too painful, then you're sitting pretty. I think the Jazz would have been better with Walker Kessler. There's no doubt about it.
Tomorrow, the Jazz would have been better with Walker Kessler.
The Jazz long-term would not have been better with Walker Kessler in a $40 million contract.
I think that's, if we're going back to our metaphor of being in the desert with water, the Jazz looked at Walker Kessler as the canteen and said, even with that canteen, we ain't making it out of the desert.
Nope.
So we've got to find a way to stretch these assets or this water supply further. And they thought 2 future firsts, 2 swaps, and financial freedom is going to get us further out of the desert. That's what they thought.
Because you don't want to be the guy drinking sand.
And they think the Lakers just bought a canteen full of sand.
Yep.
I think you're right.
At that price.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right. Anyway, the Bosnian Beak will be their starter. At least it would appear. But I don't think that is a long-term solution. And you know what? I kind of like Daniel Gafford, but maybe they don't. Maybe he doesn't fit what the Jazz are looking for. And as you pointed out yesterday, the market on centers is pretty ridiculous.
It's a bad
so
one.
You're not going to – you'd rather spend half a season or a season with the Beak and see what comes until your ideal solution pops up or whatever.
The Jazz did not sign Jusuf Nurkic to a 4-year, $80 million contract.
Mm-mm.
What was it, 2 years, 20, and the second one's non-guaranteed? Am I right on that?
That sounds right.
It's not a long-term commitment.
It is not.
It's not.
Nope. Nor is it a long-term solution, if you want to look at the other thing.
Everything the Jazz are saying, I think, is telling you the truth. Walker wasn't worth it. Nurk's not the long-term answer. They don't have the long-term answer right now, but they feel like they have the tools to probably get there.
But if your question is, are they desperate to win games? The answer is no.
Yeah, I think that's also accurate.
Yep. All right, more next. We'll get to some voicemails coming up straight ahead. Jake and Ben, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Your coffee would never get cold. Your flight would always be on time. And your mattress would always respond to you and your unique sleep needs. Sleep Number mattresses are designed to respond to your body and shift with your changing life, helping you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
As an entrepreneur and dream driver, I know how much heart goes into building a brand. That's why I love seeing small businesses have the opportunity to reach more people. Walmart helps customers discover products from thousands of small brands, each with a founder story built on passion, perseverance, innovation, and purpose. Learn more at walmart.com.